It just gives.
Things or salad or both.
Thank you all for coming. I know there have been delays tonight. The subways on the west side are all delayed and there's a lot of traffic. But it's really thank you all for turning out. Would everyone please turn down their phones or put it on vibrate? Our next meeting is June 10th with Bruce Bechtel. He is expert on Korea and anything associated with Korea, and that almost goes worldwide. His most recent book is about Iran, which he will bring and sell at a very reasonable price because he really wants to get his message out, and he's very personable. So I hope you will all consider making a purchase and making him feel good that he's coming all the way from, actually now he moved. So he's now in Las Vegas. He was in Texas and he still teaches in Texas. It's amazing what the computers, what you can do now. So, but in any case, he's coming from far and to be with us because he's been with us a few times. Even one time informally in a bakery setting on the west side, and he really enjoys our club. So let's show our appreciation for him. Membership, please renew or join to be a member. Our rent, we even though I make this announcement every month, we're not bringing in enough to cover our rent. Our rent is $450. And do the math, our dues are ridiculously low. So if you could pay the membership fee and perhaps even more, that would be really great. We also accept donations. Yes. Okay. We also accept donations of any amount, so that also would be good. We need volunteers to help us with the website, emails, and more. There are many things we would like to do with the website, and we just don't have enough people who can help get that out. We used to put out an extra email about community events. We'd like to do that again. So we need somebody to scour the community board notices for anything that might interest us and give us the dates and put things together. Yes. Everything should be done at the table. I want to tell you, it's been brought to my attention that there was a woman here who was soliciting signatures for herself and donations for herself, and no one, and she made it seem sometimes that it were for the club. I want to tell you not to pay anybody anything. The only soliciting that is done and the only payment that is done is at the signing table. So please remember that. I don't see this person here tonight, and if she continues to do that, though, we will speak to her, and she continues, she will be asked to leave. So if you have been approached before, rest assured that we are taking care of the problems. There are registration forms, political voter registration forms at the table. I urge you all you former current Democrats leaning Republicans to please register Republican. It is really important to show that we have a Republican presence in Manhattan, and would also help us get funding from the state and national. Okay. I would like to see our guest has come in. We'll wait for him to come back. He's in and out. And one other thing, sometimes people approach me, if anybody wants to solicit funds for anything, I don't know, but in any case, we don't want that to happen here. But if you want to make an announcement or there's a special consideration of funds, please, you have to speak to one of the board members first, not just come into the meeting and take over.
David Horowitz.
This is going to be a good opportunity if there's anybody who wants to mention anything about a brief statement about anything current events or anything. Okay. All right. Yeah.
I just very briefly, we're all Republicans, and I think we're all smart enough, knowledgeable enough to know that we have to exercise patience when it comes to a lot of criticism that the president is getting. When it comes to certain economic issues, let's be patient. Let's give it time.
Very good. Very good statement.
That's what.
Yeah, for myself, I understand that.
Mr. Murdock, welcome.
Yes, well, I understand that things take time. It's important to have patience. But on the other hand, the administration is just showing that it does not have a plan. That's just how it is.
Who is speaking?
It's not a matter of patience. It's me.
All right.
Yes. So at the same time, though I would say, yes, have patience, also look for what should be there, a plan, which there isn't. And if you guys can do anything to help them out, then I think that would be great.
Thank you very much. I think most people wouldn't agree with you on that. But anyway, all right. We're moving on now. I'd like to say a few words about the passing of David Horowitz. We lost an extraordinary soul in these last days and want to acknowledge the passing of David Horowitz, whom we were privileged to have as a speaker on Zoom during COVID. The brilliant Mr. Horowitz, as our High Drusen always dubbed him when urging us to get him as a speaker, was the ultimate former leftist. Born of communist parents and raised among communists in Queens, David Horowitz became the new left's interpreter and intellectual. Although he shed communism because of Stalin, he remained a socialist until the violence of the movement turned him around. Lucky for us, he also remained an intellectual, and then in several books exquisitely dissected the left and presented blueprints for counteracting it. In his talk to our club, Heading Toward the Abyss, he told us how to avoid the catastrophe of progressivism. Beyond the political, his work includes historical, spiritual, and poignant personal subjects, revealing a caring yet resilient soul who can overcome tragedy and face the future, setting an example for us all. May his soul now rest in peace. And I think maybe High Drusen had something to add.
I'll just add that he spoke at one of our first Zoom meetings, which we started doing. We only had Zoom, no in person, back in September 22. That everything that is unfortunate in this country today is due to the 1960s New Left. They're running the universities. They're the ones creating all the opposition. And I remember that I wouldn't say I was part of it, but I knew plenty of them who were just like David Horowitz. They had parents who were members of the Communist Party, and therefore they were called red diaper babies because that's what happened. That's what you term someone whose parents were members. they themselves broke with Stalin and created the New Left, which created the Black Panthers, the SDS. Those are all New Left organizations. Horowitz was in the thick of it. He's one of the people who really promoted the Panthers. The fellow in my building was another type like that, and he promoted SDS. Both of them, him and Horowitz, left and became conservatives. But while he was a communist, he was a really good communist. He went to England and he studied with Hobsbawm, which is the number one theorist of communism in the world. He was a real scholar. To why he left the left, which is a very interesting story. Of all the books he wrote, I would recommend it's the most readable. His memoir called Radical Son. You can still get it. It describes his whole life, including the 60s, the Vietnam War, and again, why he drifted, he turned to become very conservative. One more thing, I found out very recently that the building where his parents lived, which was totally occupied by communists, the whole building. He went back for a visit and he spoke to one of his old neighbors and he found that she was involved in the assassination of Trotsky, ordered by Stalin. So when I say communists, I mean communists.
Wow.
Anyway.
All right, thanks. So we've been trying for return engagement since Deroy Murdock last addressed us in 2020. Our last in-person speaker before COVID, with negotiations picking up this last year. We were curious to hear from this constant Trump supporter about his efforts within the Black community during the 2020 campaign. Whether his theme of Blacks, Democrats, and Republicans, modern myths versus historical facts had resonated. When we finally clinched the deal with the promised bottle of Prosecco, we didn't realize how perfect the timing would be. 100 days, okay, a little over, but that just allows more time for the Tom Paine of our time, according to Steve Forbes, to refine his view of Trump thus far. While not an official advisor to the Trump 2024 campaign, this political commentator, whose weekly column, This Just In, appears in the New York Post, the Washington Times, the New Hampshire Union Leader, and other papers across America, also appeared on television and radio, making clear why he endorsed President Trump and enthusiastically voted for him. More concretely, Mr. Murdock helped launch StopBogusBallots.com to fight voter fraud, specifically mail-in ballot fraud. This effort used quantum computing to reconcile voter rolls with government records, such as driver's licenses and death certificates. They discovered and publicized anomalies, such as empty lots where phantom voters were registered, then alerted county clerks requesting a cleanup, and sued those who didn't comply. Modestly, Mr. Murdock thinks this spotlight on the left, quote, probably made a difference. Mr. Murdock's involvement in campaigns didn't suddenly start with President Trump. A consistent conservative, the Switzerland of conservatives, says Newsmax founder Chris Ruddy, for everyone loves him. The Fox News contributor and contributing editor with the American Spectator is a veteran of the 1980 and 1984 Reagan campaigns and Steve Forbes' 2000 White House bid. Mr. Murdock's recent columns, Abrego Garcia, the Dem Left's inexplicable nominee for Maryland Dad of the Year, as tariffs tank markets, economy craves tax cuts, and Six Flags over Pennsylvania Avenue's latest surprise, UN Ambassador Michael Waltz. Give us an inkling of the unvarnished assessment of President Trump we expect to hear tonight from, as you will soon see, the best dressed man in America, according to Fox Business Network's Stuart Varney. We are thrilled that this Los Angeles native and now New York presence, who has lectured at the Cato Institute, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Heritage Foundation, the National Academy of Sciences, and other fora from Bogota to Budapest, is speaking to us on the West Side tonight. I asked Deroy Murdock to please step up to receive our thank you. Now,
That's about. Oh, look at this. Hold for a second. I can't do what I'm saying. Down the tongue and down the throat is really where. Well, thank you. That, like plutonium, that introduction was glowing. Thank you very much. Appreciate it very much. And I'm sorry that I'm a little late. That's kind of funny. I think the timing was okay because you obviously had some preliminaries before, but I meant to get here at 7, but I was delayed because only in New York, I was at another Jewish center. Wrong Jewish center. How often does that happen? I went to 15 West 86th, which is where I'd spoken the last time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for some reason or another, I guess I had that in my calendar mismatch or whatever. So I rang, there's no one there. I thought, well, this is strange. No activity at all. I rang the buzzer over and over and over, and nobody showed up. And then after a while, after a couple of minutes, I click and I open the door and I walk in, and there's nobody there. No audience, no security, nothing. It's a totally empty lobby. So it's like a Twilight Zone episode. I heard you guys got booted. I didn't hear the whole story, but maybe during the Q&A you could tell me. But anyway, I left a note there saying that I came by at 7:10 p.m. I didn't see you. If you guys show up, sorry. And I was walking along and somebody said there's a Jewish center here. So I looked and here. So at least 2 Jewish centers on West 86th Street. So that's very good news. So as you just heard earlier, last time I addressed you was March 3, 2020. We all know what happened 10 days later. The great wall of COVID came down. And then we all basically lost 2 years of our lives, 1.2 million of our people. And China has yet not even to apologize, but just to explain to us what happened. I'm past the point where I expect them to apologize, but I'd be very satisfied if they did 2 things. Number one, give us a 1-page fact sheet as to what happened. And number 2, just give us a timeline so we'll be able to know, just for history's sake, what occurred. Joe Biden had 4 years. He never even bothered to ask because I guess it was rude to say, just tell, don't apologize, just tell us what happened. His very first international visit to China after he got in was John Kerry, who left the U.S., flew to Beijing. Bud Boo, if you like, he's an absolute villain. And he wanted to talk about climate and global warming. He never bothered to say, by the way, about that COVID thing, you have any explanation for that? Or maybe a theory I could take back with me? It was just too rude to bring that up. So that didn't arise. But anyway, so I was here just before COVID. Thank God that's behind us. Hard to believe it's been 5 years, but here we are. Thankfully, that is in the rearview mirror, even though you do see people walk around with masks even today. And I want to yank them right off their faces. It's so annoying. It's purely performative. I've always thought that the once we were able to take the masks off, thankfully, I always thought those people kept wearing them. But basically, the COVID mask is the MAGA hat of the left. I think that's basically what it is. It's purely political. So here we are. Day 107 of the Trump presidency. Are you sick of winning? We're not sick of winning. Very good. Well, let's just discuss Trump so far, which is the title of my remarks. And I will focus on the good, the bad, and the ugly. And there's some of all of the above. Let's start with the good, and there's a lot of good. There's a lot of good about the first 107 days of Trump so far. And a lot of reasons to applaud the man, a lot of reasons to be very proud of the man for whom I think we all voted, and very proud to do so. And who knows, we'll have another opportunity to do so or not. I think the Constitution says otherwise. Who knows what tomorrow may bring. I think first and foremost is audacity. I remember when Daddy Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, ran for re-election in 1992. Someone said, "Sir, what's your agenda for your second term if you're reelected?" He said, "Well, my plan is to manage the inbox." I mean, that's a real rallying cry, right? Manage the inbox. And just deal with whatever pops up, sit there. If there's something going on, take it easy. If there's a crisis, take care of it. This is not the Donald J. Trump approach. This is a guy who gets up in the morning and he just walks head on into fire, into 75, 80, 90 mile winds. And he's not just dealing with little small issues here, a little tiny initiative there. He's taking on very, very big things like trade, like immigration, like what other places around the world are going to have more influence. The whole situation in the Middle East, bringing peace to Russia and Ukraine, et cetera, et cetera. Some of it has worked, some of it hasn't, but certainly I think even his critics should be impressed with the fact that the man takes on huge challenges and shrinks basically from nothing. I think that's amazing. Yeah. Second, energy.
boy, this guy is just the Energizer Bunny. I mean, this guy doesn't sleep. I remember a couple weeks ago, he was flying back, I think maybe from Florida, from Mar-a-Lago, perhaps it was, back to Washington, D.C. And he's giving a press conference at 2 a.m. 2 a.m. and he's on Air Force One chatting with journalists. Joe Biden at that point would have been conked out for probably about 10 hours. Baby Bush would have been conked out since probably about 9 or 8 or 9. Yeah, something like that. And Trump, no, not drunk. I think he would put it in that after the DWI. But Trump doesn't sleep more than 2-3 hours a night, if that. And this guy is incredibly energetic and he works at it all the time. He is truly a workaholic. And again, whether you agree or disagree, at least people should say, at least we're getting our money's worth out of a public servant who's working at it pretty much around the clock. That's
For free.
well, for free. Yeah, that's right. I guess what, for free or maybe $1 a year, whatever it is. I think maybe he donates his salary to veterans causes and other people, which is wonderful. So he's at it 24/7, 365. And I think part of the reason that his popularity went as high as it did, and it's come down a bit, but as high as it was people were able to see the very, very bright and dramatic contrast between Trump and all of his energy and focus versus Joe Biden, who was just checked out, clocked out. I remember towards the end, he spent like 2 weeks in the Caribbean, came back and spent the night in Delaware at his home in Wilmington, and then went straight to Camp David. So it was just vacation after vacation after vacation. All rest for the weary, I guess you might call it. And I think the contrast between the two has helped people have a much more strong impression of President Trump. Transparency, very, very positive. I think he's really pursued a policy of radical transparency, is what I call it. He runs a telepresidency. Almost everything he does is out in the open for everybody to watch and observe. Whether you agree or disagree with him, everybody knows where he is. They know what he's up to. You turn on the TV and he's right smack in front of you. Cabinet meetings live on TV. Whoever imagined you see that before. And he's got the camera there for 1.5, 2 hours, 2.5 hours while the cabinet meeting goes on. You can tune in and watch a cabinet meeting live on television. Negotiations with foreign leaders in the Oval Office. Tune in and watch. And there he was with Zelensky going on for about 45 minutes. Everything went pretty well, and of course went completely haywire. We all had to watch that on live television. That's pretty unusual. JFK and RFK papers declassified, and we've been waiting decades and decades. President Kennedy was assassinated about 18 days before I was born, and we've still got these documents sitting around. And Trump said, you know what, why don't we just release them? It's been 64 years. Let them out, or 61 years. Let them out. Let the people see them. And I think almost all of them are out. I believe same with the RFK papers. The MLK papers are going to be out soon, I believe, somewhere in the next few weeks. And then we have Jeffrey Epstein's little black book. And I think with peekaboo, we sort of saw it and then we didn't. So we're all waiting to see what exactly is going on there. So the Jeffrey Epstein little black book might be a case of partial transparency or partial opacity. So I really hope we get to the bottom of that. I think generally a sense of promises made, promises kept. What you see is what you get, and what President Trump is doing. Nobody should be surprised. Again, whether you love what he's doing or hate what he's doing, almost nothing that he's attempting is going on a big surprise. Who saw that coming? These are things he talked about on the campaign trail, in the primaries, in the general, and all his speeches and his rallies and so on. So people who complain, why is he doing this? Well, guess what? He talked about it, and he won 77 million votes to get those things done. The most dramatic one, I think, is the border. Illegal alien encounters are down 95%. Known gotaways. Known gotaways down 99%, almost completely gone. Absolutely amazing. Illegal aliens released into the interior. I believe under Joe Biden, we were up to some cases up to like 10,000 people a day. I understand at some point, maybe it's for the entire month of April, if I'm wrong, 9 people. You count them on 2 hands. And some of those people we let in for medical, humane medical reasons, et cetera. So the U.S.-Mexico border, it turns out you could close it after all. It was possible. You could do that. You could do it quickly. He did this in a matter of 3 or 4 weeks, maybe a month and a half max. So if Joe Biden wanted to close the border, he could have done so. So the idea, well, I just can't do it. It's out of control. It's really out of my hands. That was utter garbage. If he'd had any of the focus and energy and policy that President Trump has displayed, he could have shut that border down too, which basically says to me that the reason the border was open is because he wanted it to be open. Democrats wanted it to be open. This was not an accident. This wasn't incompetence. This was totally deliberate public policy. And their view was, well, let's let 10 million people in, let them in here, get them on public assistance, get them dependent on the government, and at some point get them voting, either legally once they get amnesty and citizenship, or why not get them voting illegally? And some of these people can be, again, some of them might be cynical and nefarious. They let me go in here and let me see if I can swim the election. Others of them might be just very innocent. Well, Joe Biden let me in. Joe Biden's taking care of me. I've got my beautiful hotel room down on Times Square. He's buying clothes for me. He's taking care of my kids in school. I'm getting free medical care. I really like that. Let me go vote for the Democrats and thank them for their generosity. Maybe not knowing that's illegal, or maybe thinking these people have a right to vote or something like that. And the Democrats figure, okay, well, we'll just register people willy-nilly. We won't check IDs. And who knows, some of these people will show up in a tight election. You don't need to get of those 10 million. You don't need all 10 million. You know, a few thousand here, a couple thousand there, 5,000 in that spot, 8,000 there, 3,000 that county. And in a tight election, you can flip an entire state. In a city like this, you can probably flip City Hall. So I don't think this is a mistake. This is a very, very deliberate policy. And I'm glad to see that President Donald J. Trump has put a complete end to it. Another great triumph is the end of DEI, the end of transmania, what I call anti-Semitism, President Trump's efforts to get the colleges and universities to end their kind of wink and nod towards anti-Semitism, which we've seen it right up here up the street at Columbia University and universities all across the country. And basically saying to these people, look, you keep up this nonsense and you don't take care of your Jewish students, that's fine. You can do it with private money. We're going to cut off your taxpayer funds. And by the way, Harvard has a private endowment of around 52 billion, would it be $52 billion? I'm not sure why we're sending them any money, anti-Semitism or no anti-Semitism. They have a lot of cash. And by the way, that's tax-free. They don't pay any taxes on that money. So maybe they can take care of themselves. I also remember during COVID, some of the parents said, look, you know, my son or daughter is at Harvard and doing Zoom school. And so, you know, can we get some tuition remission? If we get a rebate, we get some money back. Because, you know, my kid's at home in the basement doing Zoom University, not on campus in Cambridge. And Harvard said, no, you don't get any money back. Nothing, sorry. Not even a little bit, not like 10%, or here, have $1,000, take your kid out to dinner. No, zip up. So if that's the attitude they have, you know, the hell with it. Another huge success, I think, is Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency.
Excuse me, I appreciate the enthusiasm. The atmosphere we usually love to have a meeting, so I appreciate if you would come and get it. Thank you.
Wow, stepping on my applause. Okay. Applaud as politely as you like. How about that? So I think Doge has been an enormous success. And I think even those of us who've been skeptical about the federal government and its activities and its involvement in virtually every aspect of human endeavor and human life, I think we've been stunned at what we've been able to find from Doge. And just to give you a couple examples that I found very eye-popping. For starters, Social Security numbers. We discovered, thanks to Elon Musk and his team of very, very smart people at Doge, that we have Social Security numbers for Americans aged 150 to 159. These are people born between 1866 and 1875. Not 2 or 3 or 4, but 1,345,083. That's 1.3 million Social Security numbers assigned to people between ages 150 and 159. Then we have, we'll take questions after. Then we've got people age 170 to 179. These people born 1846 to 1855. Roughly the time, 1848 was when Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels published the Communist Manifesto. So this would have a new book when these people were born. That's 6,087 people who have Social Security numbers who are that age. And then Americans aged 220 to 229. These are people born between 1796 and 1805. These are people who would have been little babies at the time of the Louisiana Purchase. We have such people with Social Security numbers adding up to 1,039. 1,039 people. Now, this says to me a couple of things. One is either the Social Security system and the way they manage their Social Security numbers are incredibly, desperately, spectacularly incompetent at best. Their systems are not working very well at all. That's the innocent explanation. Or the non-innocent explanation. We'll take questions after. Or the non-innocent explanation is
Q&A afterwards. That's our agenda. So please hold the question.
yes, I will answer questions when we're finished, when I'm done talking. So either they're desperately, spectacularly incompetent, or this is, kind of a giant scam. And people on the inside are perhaps providing these numbers or looking the other way. And then people use these numbers to engage in all kinds of fraud and malfeasance. Also, Doge took a look at the Small Business Administration. And we learned between 2020, 2021, the Small Business Administration handed out 5,593, so about 5,600 loans, totaling $312 million to business owners who were ages 11 years old and younger. Okay, so these are 8, 9, and 10-year-old entrepreneurs who are running such great businesses that they can apply for SBA loans. Okay. The SBA also approved 3,095 loans worth $333 million. That's 1/3 of $1 billion to borrowers over 115 years old. So again, more of these really super old people. One particularly industrious applicant scored a cool $36,000. That applicant's age, 157. 157. Somebody born in 1868, just 3 years after the Civil War, right at the beginning of Reconstruction. I'll have whatever he's having. Doge discovered unemployment benefits for very young people. This is one of my favorites. Doge found one person who scored $41,000 in jobless benefits. This person's date of birth is the year 2154 AD. Okay, this person's age is -129. This individual's grandparents haven't met yet. Okay, now I respect the unborn, but this takes it a bit too far. So you wonder, are the folks who are running this program totally asleep at the switch? Are they completely incompetent, or are they getting a taste of this graft? I don't know. I hope it's not the latter. Now, could the solution to this program be very simple? What if we had a computer? One of these, there are lots of coders. Some brilliant person who knows computer code, write a little tiny piece of code that says, don't send checks to anyone under age 1. Let's start there. Is that asking too much? Is that so hard? So that's the good. Let's talk a bit about the bad. I think the biggest mistake President Trump has made is the tariff situation as it's laid out, or as it's basically come to pass. Now, I think there are positives and negatives here, and my quibble is to some degree a matter of the policy itself, but largely the way it's been rolled out. Okay. Now, I think tariffs can be great in the short term as instruments of blunt instrument trauma. The best example we saw was when Trump said he wanted to have the nation of Colombia, not the University of the nation, take back its illegal alien criminals and repatriate those people. And the president of Colombia said, no, I don't want to. And Trump said, okay, fine, we'll slap 25% tariffs on all Colombian goods. And within a couple of hours, he called and said, well, Mr. President, I want to make sure that these Colombians are safe and they have all the dignity they deserve. So I'm going to fly up the Air Force One, the presidential plane in Colombia, and fly those people back on the presidential jet. Okay, so not only did we get those people out of there, but they flew back on the Colombian president's jet. And I guess the tariff threat went away, and that's a really good example of how that can work in the short term. In the medium term, what I'm hoping is that what this policy is a matter of raising tariffs at the moment. So you scare people overseas and negotiate them down. I hope to the point of zero. We have open free trade. We can trade across borders, just like we send pieces of mail back and forth, unhindered without the government getting involved. And if that's where all this ends up, that would be great. I hope that's where this all winds up. Long term, if the idea is, and I think Peter Navarro believes this, that tariffs are good in and of themselves, and that this somehow is a brilliant new source of revenue, and we should leave them there as a new way of funding our public programs, I think that's a really bad idea. I think it fundamentally misunderstands what tariffs are. Tariffs are taxes, period. They're nothing more than taxes. And Peter Navarro likes to say, don't worry, the Chinese will pay for them. And I'd be very happy if you could have a boat full of goods come in from Shanghai, land in Long Beach, and the tariff invoice goes to Xi Jinping's personal credit card or personal checking account, and all that money comes from Beijing into the U.S. Treasury, courtesy of Xi Jinping. That would be nice. That would be lovely. Okay. And according to Peter Navarro, we're getting $600 billion a year that way. All right. And again, if we're coming out of Beijing, wonderful. This is a magic pot of money. Well, guess what, folks? It's not coming from Beijing. That money is coming out of our pockets, back in our pockets. It's a bit like if you're in the hospital and you get a transfusion from the Red Cross. You get a nice, let's say 2 units of blood. Yeah, I feel stronger. I've got 2 units of blood. This is terrific. That's the Xi Jinping paying tariffs model. Versus the nurse comes in, takes 2 pints of blood out of your left arm and puts it back in your right arm and pumps it into your right arm. It's like, yay, look at all the new blood I got. No, you're just getting your same blood circulating next from one side of your body to the other, which is basically what this situation is. We need to understand that tariffs are paid by us. They're not paid by anybody else. And to the degree we're taking money, pumping money in the economy, we're just pumping it out of another part of the economy. So this is not a good thing. This is not a good thing at all. So I think also, unfortunately, Trump did this backwards. I think he should have done the whole thing in this order. First, cut taxes. We should have had that big, beautiful bill signed by President Trump. Ideally, I would have had it signed April 15th. If not April 15th, it should have been between tax day, which would have been a great time to implement a massive tax cut. If not April 15th, I would have done it May 1st, which is May Day. What better way to screw the socialists than to sign a massive tax cut? Right? Give them a reason to frown. Once the tax cut's in place and Americans have money in their pockets and the lingering after effects of Bidenomics start to disappear and people start to feel more flush, they can pay their bills and they're feeling more economically confident, then at that point, I think you're going to do tariffs. You are doing it upon an economy that's actually thriving and doing well, rather than an economy that's still bumping along and having been beaten down by Joe Biden, still not fully having recovered yet, unfortunately. So that's the first thing I would have done. The second thing I would have done, if I were Trump, I would have invited our top 50, 75, or 100, whatever it is, trading partners, either to the White House or Mar-a-Lago, Greenbrier, wherever it might be, to bring them all together, put them in a room, and say, here's my proposal. I want to have 0% tariffs on goods coming into my country, and I want 0% tariffs on our goods going to your countries. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And if they all agree to it, you will have a beautiful, most amazing, immaculate, gorgeous, pure free trade agreement. It could be signed, be a couple of lines of 0% tariffs in both directions. Everyone signs it, and the economy booms like it's ever boomed before, and Donald J. Trump takes his rightful place on Mount Rushmore. Would be truly the greatest free trade agreement in human history. All right. Now, if they agree to it, wonderful. If they disagree and say, no, we like tariffs, screw you, we're not going to do 0% tariffs. Then Trump could say, all right, I tried to do it the right way. I tried 0% tariffs. They wouldn't listen. So we're going to respond with reciprocal tariffs. He would have been able to do so from a moral high ground, or from a position where even people on the left would say, what? He tried to do it the right way. They rejected it. So he has every right to try to do these reciprocal tariffs. And the third thing is, if that failed, then you oppose the reciprocal tariffs, having taken that, at least try to put ourselves in a position of the moral high ground. Unfortunately, President Trump has done this backward. We got this nice big tranche of reciprocal tariffs on Liberation Day. We're still waiting for the tax cut. I hope it happens soon. Who knows what can happen? There's a very narrow margin of 3 seats in each house. You just need 3 or 4 people to say, you know what, I want these state and local tax deduction. If I don't get it, I'm not voting for the tax bill. Or, my little subsidies in there, I'm voting against the tax bill. You have 3 or 4 of those people walk away, this whole thing crashes and burns. So I hope we get a tax cut. I hope we get it soon. I'd like to see it signed before Memorial Day, which means end of this month. And if that happens, great. If it doesn't, the longer we wait, the more uncertainty we have, the harder it is for people to decide, hey, let's open that factory, not open that factory. Let's introduce that new product line. Let's launch that new service, because we know that our taxes will be X in 2026. Right now, we have no idea. Will we have a tax cut or not? What will the tariffs be? All this uncertainty is really led to the economy being much weaker than it should be. So I really hope that we get this done quickly. But unfortunately, this has been done backwards. We're getting the tax cuts late at some point. We hope the tariffs are already there. And then I think it's been very unevenly applied. President Trump came up with the reciprocal tariffs, put them on Liberation Day, and said these are going to continue. I'm not backing down until you folks lower your tariffs. And then a couple weeks later, they said, okay, we're going to put a 90-day hold. We're going to put everything on hold for 90 days. And a few days later, he said, okay, well, I'm just going to eliminate the tariffs on Chinese electronics, laptops, so on and so forth. And about a week later, said, well, I might put them back on before 90 days. So this has been going back and forth. I think it's completely, essentially, evening at the improv with our money. And if we're going to have a policy like this, it ought to be thought through, applied evenly, implemented sensibly, and stuck to, rather than just kind of popping up and going back and forth. Sometimes if Trump's saying one thing, Scott Bessent says another, Peter Navarro says a third, and then we've got Howard Lutnick saying something else, and these voices are often totally contradictory. Howard Lutnick also said, our Commerce Secretary, former chairman of Cantor Fitzgerald, and we all remember how much they suffered on September 11th. It's just amazing. He's probably lucky to be alive himself. In any case, He said that really what's wonderful about this whole tariff effort is that it will restore reinvigorate American manufacturing. And he said, but we'll have robots producing all these goods, and poor people can learn to fix the robots. Now, if that's really what we're doing here, I think in order to be able to fix a robot, you probably need a degree in mechanical engineering from MIT. Okay, you're not going to be a high school dropout who spends a couple of weeks at robot repair academy and then goes and fixes these robots that are putting together cars and dishwashers and refrigerators and all sorts of other stuff. So if that's really what Howard Letnick believes, I think this is even more cockeyed than we might think. And I hope he's not. I hope doesn't represent the mainstream of administration thinking on this. But if we are going to have a policy on tariffs, I think it needs to be unfurled much more smoothly and more consistently than it has been. So that's pretty much the bad. How about the ugly? The two bits of ugliness I see. Primarily, they're kind of very much interrelated. One is this whole idea of we're going to get Greenland. We need Greenland. We've got to grab Greenland. Trump said just the other day he won't rule out seizing it by military force. So what? Are we going to have U.S. troops opening fire on Danish soldiers who are our NATO allies? Now, this isn't, hey, we're going to go seize some oil fields in Iran. We're going to go grab part of Syria, or we're upset with North Korea, so we're going to go turn North Korea into the 51st state. We're going to go grab Greenland, which is belongs to Denmark, which is a NATO ally. Now, I think it's perfectly okay to say, listen, Greenland has a very, very strategic place in the northern Atlantic between Russia and the United States and the West. The Chinese have been floating around there in their boats and all that, and we want to keep an eye on these guys. So we really want a big, beautiful, maybe Guantanamo type base in Greenland, or maybe several bases, a Navy base, and maybe an Army base, maybe an Air Force base. Terrific. I'm all for that. But the idea of talking to our Danish friends and allies, and the Danish have been very good about showing up with us in the Middle East and fighting alongside our soldiers in a number of engagements, and saying, hey, we're just going to grab it. We're just going to seize it. I think it's ugly. I think this is horrible. I don't like this kind of talk. Openly threatening to seize territory from our allies, no less, sounds like something you'd expect to hear out of the mouth of Leonid Brezhnev or Joseph Stalin. Frankly, it has a bit of a ring of Anschluss about it, which I do not like at all. Not pretty. And no American president should talk that way about our friends or to our friends. Likewise, Trump's rhetoric about Canada has been catastrophic. It's one thing to lampoon Earth's most beautiful communist, Justin Trudeau. It's quite another to ridicule his country and its people. Trump repeatedly has said that Canada should be the 51st state. He made some comment along the lines, I wasn't able to get the exact quote, but something along the lines of Canada is not a worthy country, or not a serious country, words to that effect. Not a pretty comment at all. The Economist magazine described a predictable response from Canadians, and I quote, holidays in the United States have been canceled and the American national anthem booed before hockey games. Shops have emptied their shelves of American booze, replacing it with placards that read, buy Canadian instead. Not good. It's not a good thing when our beautiful allies to the north, our next door neighbors, are at a hockey game or sporting engagement against a U.S. team. They hear the Star Spangled Banner and they start booing. It's not a good thing when people boo the Star Spangled Banner in this country or outside of this country. So as 2025 started, Canada's Liberal Party was in tatters and Conservatives were poised to win. Being led by a man whose name I can't quite pronounce, but I think it's Poilievre or Paulvo or Puvo, Poilievre, Popilev. I can't say it. Anyway, but he seemed like a really good guy, the most conservative guy running in Canada. And then Trump showed up and began trivializing and insulting our next door neighbor and ally to the north, not once or twice, but repeatedly, again and again and again. What was the result of this? Well, the Canadian support for Trump's fellow conservatives collapsed. And Liberal Mark Carney got elected a week ago, promising 5 more years of Canadian socialism. Nice work. So rather than having somebody like the equivalent of male Margaret Thatcher to our north, or Helmut Kohl type, or somebody who could be an ally of ours who thinks the way Trump does, the way we do, and maybe working on tax cuts, maybe introducing a bit of freedom in the Canadian National Health Service, working with us very closely on international matters, we now have somebody to the north who basically thinks my job is to stop Donald J. Trump, stand in his way, and make his life miserable. Not good. Finally, briefly, where have all the Democrats been through all of this? We've talked about Donald J. Trump's first 107 days. Let's talk about the opposition party. The Democrat Party's in tatters, as it should be. I like to see Democrats in tatters, and that's where they are today. And the once mighty Democrat Party of FDR, JFK, LBJ, Bill Clinton, and even Obama is now the party of waste, fraud, and abuse. They've come out and said, we hate Elon Musk. Doge must stop, shut Doge down completely. Now, if they had any brains, what they'd say is they'd say, look, you're right. We can't really have people who are negative 154 years old getting unemployment benefits. And I don't think there are really that many 11-year-olds who are running companies who should be getting SBA loans. So yes, Mr. Musk and yes, Mr. Trump, you're correct. We need to put a stop to this. We will work with you to end these ridiculous excesses. But we have some important things like, for example, Alzheimer's research. It's a very expensive disease. It makes families suffer miserably for many, many years. And can you please do what you can to make sure that Alzheimer's research gets the proper funding it should, so we can put an end to this disease. Now, that would have been a sensible position. A lot of people say, okay, the Democrats are making a good point. Well, they stand up and say, shut down Doge, we hate Elon Musk, stop everything. What they're basically saying is, we love the waste, we love the fraud, we love the abuse, keep stealing people's money and keep the graft going. And this is where the Democrats have left themselves as the party of waste, fraud, and abuse. They have become the party of political violence. We've all seen the attacks on Tesla vehicles, Tesla facilities, like the 5 or so cars set on fire in Las Vegas, people spray painting Tesla dealerships, pouring paint on them, etc., attacking Tesla drivers. And you would expect that somebody, Nancy Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, would stand up and say, this is out of control. We don't agree with Elon Musk. We think Doge is doing some bad things, but we don't do this in America. This is not how we operate this country. Please be peaceful, protest peacefully, have sit-ins, light candles, pray, whatever you want to do, but don't attack Tesla owners, Tesla vehicles, Tesla facilities. To his credit, I can think of 2 people who made that comment. One was Ro Khanna, California, Congressman of Silicon Valley. And Bernie Sanders, to his credit, did say we shouldn't do this, shouldn't attack, engage that kind of violence. That's it. I've not heard anything else along those lines. Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee introduced a measure that basically said we condemn the violence being directed towards Tesla. And that was stopped on the Senate floor. They refused to allow unanimous consent for that to be brought up for consideration. Okay. The Democrats very easily could say, you're right, stop the violence. Nope, they stopped it. They stopped an effort. There were no teeth. It didn't say throw them in jail. It didn't say they need to lose their citizenship. It just said the Senate hereby condemns the violence against Tesla. And the Democrats stepped forward and said, no, we refuse to allow unanimous consent. So I think they probably didn't want a roll call on that. And all you need is one person to oppose the unanimous consent. The whole thing just goes downhill. The party is not any longer the party of MLK, Rosa Parks, and Cesar Chavez. This has become the party of Kilmar, Abrego Garcia, Carmelo Anthony, and Luigi Mangione. Okay. Again, the Democrats have embraced this Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the man who turns out to be not the Maryland dad we've heard about, who's just busy driving his kids to soccer practice and PTA meetings. This guy turns out to be an MS-13 member with the tattoos on his knuckles, illegal alien, human smuggler, wife beater, and terrorist. Okay, this is the new mascot of the Democrat Party. And you think that at some point they say, well, this is kind of a loser. We got to find somebody else. There's this still hanging on to this guy and saying he needs to be let out of El Salvador and back up here. You think somebody in the Democrat Party could find somebody who's been deported, who's maybe like a 75-year-old grandma who just was taking care of her little grandkids. She's not hurting anybody. She's not bothering anybody. So, this is what Donald J. Trump is doing. Hurting this poor little grandma, this poor abuela who just wants to take care of her grandkids. They couldn't do that. And yet they picked this guy who's just a complete total thug. And his wife is on video. There's a videotape that came out yesterday of her describing what it's like for him to have beaten her, knocked her in the head with a boot, socked her in the face. Apparently, on the day of her daughter's 13th birthday, just got up and just slapped her in the face 3 times for no reason, slapped her in front of her sister. This guy's a total wifey. This guy's a total, complete, disgusting degenerate. This is the party of women. Remember the Democrats? We're the party of women. We're the party of women, okay? The party of women has now become the party of women beaters. It's astonishing. And then you've got, and who knows what a woman is? I mean, we're not vile. Anybody here vile? Maybe if you're vile, you can tell us what a woman is. If you're not, who really knows? And then we have Carmelo Anthony. This is the young guy in Texas who went up to Austin Metcalf over some disagreement about who would be allowed to be in this tent where they were at a track meet. And there's some words were exchanged. And Carmelo Anthony thought, well, rather than walk away or find a teacher to come in and intervene, or maybe do what people used to do in the old days, just sock the guy in the face, thought, well, let me just take a knife and stick it in his heart and let him bleed to death, okay? And this poor guy, this 17-year-old, good-looking guy, apparently a great student, great athlete, football player, on his way to college, bled to death in the arms of his identical twin brother. Wow, does it get any uglier than that? This poor identical twin brother who's known him since they were in utero together for 9 months. These two apparently were inseparable, and they were identical. They totally looked alike. He's got to sit there at age 17 and watch his his beautiful identical twin brother, bleeding to death in his arms, okay? And you think the Democrats, everyone's saying, you know, what a rotten guy, this Carmelo Anthony should burn in hell, he should be put on trial, he should get life in prison, if not execution. I think the little bastard ought to be executed personally. I'd be very happy to see him get his 2,000 votes in electric chair. All right. But no, they said, well, you know, maybe this is racial. Maybe this is just a black and white thing. And they started raising money for him, and they've raised, I think it's somewhere around $500,000 more for this guy. And all sorts of people come out and say, oh, Carmelo Anthony's the victim. And they were putting pressure on him. This poor baby, Carmelo Anthony, was put upon by the Metcalfs and his monstrous father, and on and on. His father lost his job, by the way. And it turned out that Carmelo Anthony is now a folk hero, and the left is holding him up as a great guy. While this victim is not just beaten up or have a bruised or black eye, he's dead, living in a casket now. Thank you very much. And then we've got during Q&A, please mention that. And then Luigi Mangione, not too far from here, right in front of the New York Hilton, the CEO of United Healthcare was on his way to a conference to give a speech. And Luigi Mangione pops up, shoots him in the back, kills him. And again, people say, my God, this is terrible. It's a poor man, it's father, husband. Now you have a widow with raising her kids without a father. This is a terrible thing. What a tragedy. And what an awful thing. Let's have justice for Luigi. No. Luigi Mangione, again, he's a folk hero. He's a wonderful guy. In San Francisco, I believe it's this month or next, there is appearing on stage Luigi the Musical. Okay, it's now a musical. You can get tickets. It's watch Luigi the Musical. So he's now the focus of a musical. A cold-blooded killer who murdered somebody, assassinated the CEO of United Healthcare. And again, where's the left? Where's the left, as the right has done, condemning this and saying, look, you could disagree with United Healthcare, you could disagree with the American way of paying for medicine. Maybe there's a better way. Maybe it ought to be reformed. I think there are many ways it ought to be reformed. But you don't reform it by going up to the CEO of United Healthcare and shooting him dead, which is what Luigi Mangione did. And it doesn't really seem to bother the Democrats very much at all. Quite appalling. So there you have it after 107 days. The good, the bad, the ugly, and the hideous. Thank you very much. I will be happy to answer questions until I'm told to stop.
So lucky that we have this second in-person meeting and that we managed to leapfrog over COVID.
Yes, indeed. Well, thankfully, we're still here.
Now, I see a lot of new faces tonight, so even for the old faces, I have to tell you this, Russian supply, your 30-second question, you have to formulate a question. 30 seconds, if you want to make a statement, it's an expensive question. 30 seconds maximum. Yes.
Yeah, let's go left to right. Yeah, we'll start with you and we'll just go come back. I know we'll go back and forth.
One of the questions I have with all the savings that they're finding with Social Security, all this money that they've stolen over the years, the retirees would have gotten a higher Social Security check. Now, with the money that they're saving now and that they're recapturing, will they raise and apply some of that money towards this retirees' Social Security checks?
That's a very good question. I don't know if there's any plan to take whatever money's been defrauded and put it back into the fund to increase the return. I imagine that's what should happen. I would make the argument, again, I don't know economics and quite what is being proposed, but I would make the argument politically that when people say, oh my God, why is Musk doing what he's doing? And look, if there is fraud in Social Security and people who don't deserve that money are running off with it, that's at the expense of grandma and grandpa who are 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, or 100, who should be getting this money. They work hard for it and they're at home retired, they paid into it. And that system is there for their benefit, not for the benefit of illegal aliens, not for the benefit of people who are in their 20s, 30s, or 40s, not for the benefit of people who live overseas. And so, yes, part of Doge's effort is to find people who are grabbing, reaching into the Social Security cookie jar, running off with the cookies, saying, no, hand the cookies back, put them back in for the benefit of elderly people. And that's how we challenge all the people who are screaming at Elon Musk. Would you rather that the fraud continue and Social Security retirees not get what they deserve? The Democrat Party is supposed to be the party of Social Security. So you think they have all people would say, yeah, absolutely, find those fraudsters, get the money out of their hands and put it back to the till for Social Security recipients. And if they're not, we ought to make that argument to them. And if they don't agree with us, they'll say, oh, the Democrat Party is the party of stealing from grandma and grandpa's Social Security. Over here. No, we're gonna go back and forth, all right? We'll go back and forth, and we'll call this John, it's fine. Yes, ma'am, please. And let's wait for the microphone so we all can hear.
Good evening, and thanks for making time to come here.
Thank you,
I
ma'am.
have two quick questions.
Yes.
One, I would like to know, since tomorrow the conflict start, if Trump is major press as prophet message hidden. And number two, I would like to know if there is justice for Ashley Babbitt. Since Democrats are celebrating violence and they talk about the due process when it is going.
Correct. I heard your second question better, but yeah. The first question was about the Pope, and the conclave starts tomorrow. Yeah, I know there's a picture of Trump dressed up as the Pope. He said that somebody put that on the internet and up on Truth Social or something like this. Some people find that funny, some people find it offensive. Trump does a lot of crazy things, and this falls in the category. I've always said that the thing about Trump is it's really a trade-off. The good news is 90% of the time he does what we conservatives want. 10% of the time he does crazy stuff. This would fall in the crazy category. I found it interesting and kind of amusing. Other people might have been deeply offended by it. If I were Trump, I'd say, look, don't dress up as the Pope, especially like a week after he died. Right? That's just me. But other people might have found it entertaining. Well, I know he didn't do it, but it ended up getting put on Truth Social. So, it should have been, Truth Social is basically his platform. He owns it. It shouldn't come out of it. It shouldn't have. If somebody else does it, fine, but he should not. Nobody at the White House should say, oh, this is great. Let's post this so everyone can see it on Truth Social, which is owned by Trump. That then it ends splashing in space, which is not good. And your other question about Ashley Babbitt, I did see very briefly, I didn't get the details, but I did see something in the news recently about some recent new information that's come out about her. I know Ashley Babbitt was in the Capitol on January 6th, and she was shot by a Capitol police officer. That Capitol police officer had been in trouble in the past for leaving his gun in places it shouldn't have been, and just being kind of careless about his handling his gun and treating his gun the way he should have, just with great care. And she's now dead. As far as I know, she was unarmed. Maybe she should have been where she was, but she wasn't armed, trying to break in and kill anybody or anything like that. She probably should have been handcuffed and put on the ground and taken to jail. Instead, she's dead, and there's no coming back from that, unfortunately. More. Tell me more. Okay. Okay. This happened last couple of days. Okay, last week. Now, all right. And part of the reason I don't know this in any detail, and thank you for the clarification, about a week ago, my cable box died. So completely kaput. So I have no cable TV, so I got to get that fixed, and I need to get the cable guy to come in and hook my cable TV guy. So I'm missing a lot of these things, unfortunately. I do have YouTube, so I'm seeing a lot of doggy videos and other stuff, but there's not that much news per se on YouTube, a lot less than that. So thank you for the clarification. So settled by the Justice Department, and her family got $30 million. Is that correct? Okay, so there's the justice for you, $30 million. It doesn't bring Ashley back, but it's certainly $30 million more than the family would have gotten if Kamala Harris won the White House. I promise you that. I promise you that, no question. Sir, let's have wait for the microphone. Right here, this gentleman here. Thank you.
All right, so I think that there's a lot of things that I would address, okay, but I just don't have the time.
Question.
Excuse me, sir, please do not take up my time. Thank you. So let's just take one thing, right? The whole DOE thing, the whole Department of Governmental Efficiency.
Yes.
Okay, so apart from the whole issue with separation of powers, right? Question
You
statement.
have 30 seconds, please. 20 seconds.
And everybody else is taking away from my time, which, I definitely noticed, but all right. So the issue is.
I'll start now. Hang on a second.
Oh, thank you.
30 seconds starting. I'm going to time it.
So the issue is that all governmental systems use a different programming language than modern programming languages. Because of that, a lot of artifices went into the system, such as people having these supposedly ridiculous birthdays. But they did have controls to prevent payments being made from people to say 115 years or older. That's just a fact. So when I hear from you that Doji was doing all these things, which actually it's not, when I hear that they were doing a good job, which they weren't, it calls into question the rest of your narrative. So I'm just saying, please, please, please clean up the narrative where you're able
All right.
to.
I think it's clear. I think it's clear what you're saying. Right. Okay. Listen, as I said, and I have a chart here, okay? I wish I made copies, but I'll just give you a couple of examples here. Americans over age 120 with social security numbers, 12.4 million. 12.4 million people with over age 120 with social security numbers. Ages 120, 129, 3.4 million, almost 3.5 million. 130, 139, 3.9 million. 140, 159, 3.5 million.
Boss Dodge, it's a question too. The question.
I'm not dodging it. I'm
How
answering.
much payments are being?
You're not gonna scream at me while I answer your question. I'm answering your question and you'll be quiet while I answer it. I'm not gonna be screaming at me, okay? I have a microphone. I can scream a lot more loudly than you can, sir. You asked a question, and I'm answering your question in detail. I'm answering your question in detail. I'm answering your question in detail, so stop screaming at me, okay? I'll give you examples of the tremendous number of social security, high number of social. Let me answer your question. Let me answer your question. God damn it! Please.
Don't even ask.
Stop it. I want to answer your question in detail. Okay? As I said before, he doesn't be thrown out, but he needs to listen to my question. I listen to your question. I can listen to my answer. All right. As I said before, 12.4 million numbers in Social Security of people over 120, 3.5 million roughly over 120. 3.9 over 130 and 3.5 or so over 140. Okay. What this says to me at a bare minimum is the Social Security system is very, very sloppy. Okay. Now, maybe these people are not getting checks. Maybe nobody's getting paid. We shouldn't have 12.4 million numbers floating around representing people. Now, these numbers are supposedly tied to individuals. Anybody could go in and say, oh, look, here's a name of somebody who's under 35 years old. Let's use this name and social security number to apply to vote, to apply for food stamps, to apply for New York City housing, who knows what, okay? So even if nobody's made a penny, nobody's gotten paid anything, I don't think this is a good example of government efficiency. At a bare minimum, if nothing else, let's have it so you don't have these loose numbers floating around, and the only number of social security, the total number of social security numbers we have is equal to the number of people, living, breathing human beings in the system, okay, at a bare minimum. Now, people also are getting money out of this system and robbing from the system and pulling money out of the treasury that should be going to old people, then that's an even worse system. So at a bare minimum, sir, we have to have a much more efficient, clean, and orderly and working system of which we can be proud, rather than a system like this, which at a bare minimum, absolutely nothing else, is far too sloppy for the United States of America. Next question. Question, and I answered in detail. No. Next question. Is there a question, sir? We'll take this question over here.
No, let me just say something, please. We pride ourselves on having a robust Q&A, but it has to be simple. And if you ask a question, you wait for the answer. And we can't have a back and forth. You're not the only person who has done this. We've had a problem in the past. We have a speaker who was, not Mr. Murdock, another speaker who won't come to us. But most speakers really enjoy the Q&A and ask to return. But we have had a few where that didn't work. So we all have to work on being civil and polite and having order. You ask the question, other people have to have a chance to ask the question as well. It was a good question. I understand that you're not satisfied with President Trump, and we do want to hear dissent. We always do, but it has to be done in a polite manner. All right.
I agree with that more. Sir, please. Thank you, sir.
Hi, thank you for coming. It's a pleasure to hear you speak.
Pleasure meeting you.
One of my complaints about the Republican Party is the lack of activism. And especially it bothers me to see the way Elon Musk is being treated. What specifically can President Trump do to support Musk against the leftist mob that are firebombing his dealerships, that are boycotting Tesla cars, that won't buy his cars, that really are shorting his stock, Tesla stock. Tim Walz even bragged about Tesla trading at 225. And it bothers me that Republicans are not backing him up, and they need him because he has the money to support their campaigns for the 2026 midterms. Specifically, what can President Trump do to help them out?
Good. Thank you very much. That's a great question. What can President Trump do to help Elon Musk, given how much resistance, to coin a term, has been thrown his way? I think the very best thing that Trump can do to whatever he can is to keep him around. He's only served as a temporary government employee for under 30 days, which I think will run out right about now. Actually, it'll be 23 days from now, I suppose. In any case, and Musk wants to go back to his company and try to put all this back together. I do think that he may continue to come around as a volunteer, which he certainly limits on being a volunteer. So to whatever degree he can help guide Doge, help Doge dig up more government waste, great. He said he's trying to find $1 trillion. I think they're about 160 billion. So there's a way to go, and then I keep looking, and I keep going through all these agencies and finding excessive spending, ridiculous spending, things that are fraudulent. What can Trump do beyond that? I think, especially where there's inefficiency, you want to get efficiency and proper system and proper governance going. I think where there's fraud, people need to be locked up. Now, I think you may have some of these agencies where you have well-meaning people who are trying to do the right thing. Maybe they're just not that sharp, or maybe they don't have the wherewithal to handle things the way we'd like. Some of these people are dealing with computers that we go back to the days of old floppy disks. There's only so much you can do with a computer that goes back to the it's like a little bit more modern than IBM Selectric typewriter. So some of them are able to do as much efficiency as we'd like. But that's one thing. But we have people who are actually stealing money, engaging in fraud. So those people in handcuffs. Okay, and those people need to be locked up for a long time. And I think showing that there is a price for fraud, and that is you go to jail. I think that'd be a very good thing. We found there was an interview Jesse Waters did with some of the Doge guys last week, and one of them said that apparently they had I think it's Department of Education, maybe off-government agency, but they had a fund like for travel and whatnot. And they said, all right, if you want to draw down from this, you're welcome to, but you need to send a receipt. Silence. At that point, okay, I guess I'll just keep my losses. Keep the money I've had and not try to reach in the till again. As soon as people had to document the money they were asking for, they stopped asking. So that says to me whatever's going on before was, if not illegal, then at least a little fishy, and that's not good. I don't like to see fishy government. Certainly don't like to see illegal government. So I would keep Musk around as much as possible. I would lock these people up. And then I think a lot of things that Doge has done, it's really great they've been able to find these successes. Those savings need to be put into the budget, this big, beautiful bill. And then any of these reforms which are not actual dollars and cents were saved, but maybe the way certain operations should be taken care of, whatever. It's over distracted. There should be another big, beautiful bill at the end of the year, which all these Doge ideas staple them together and make that the big, beautiful bill too. And then take a lot of these things which were basically, I would say cell phones are destroying America. To throw it out, just out the windows, fling it, free cell, fling it out the window. Yeah. So I think this is in order to help out Musk's ideas of what Doge is trying to do. I think taking a lot of these things, putting all these things in a big, beautiful bill and passing them so that they're actually statutes rather than just executive orders would be a big help. What can Trump do to help Musk personally? I think you give him the Presidential Medal of Freedom. That'd be a big plus. I think that fuck him up. And then anybody who attacked a Tesla driver or attacked a Tesla facility should be locked up on federal terrorism charges and throw them in jail for like 20 years. Not this 3 months and then some community service. No, lock them up for 20 years. Let them rot. Okay, send messages. We don't do that in this country. You want to protest peacefully, great. You want to go and shorten his stock, okay, that's legal. You want to buy something other than Tesla, marvelous. But you're going to go set fire to things and throw them all to cocktails and stuff and send your devices and then take keys and tear up people's paint jobs and then stop them on the street and berate them. There'd be several videos of people going up and screaming, yelling in the faces of people who drive Teslas. And what's odd about this whole thing, it really is in a sense like a new category of crime, which I call terrorism, but much more interesting than that is left on left violence. Okay, because most Tesla, I imagine the average Tesla driver is probably more on the left than on the right. So you've got all these people on the left who are attacking fellow leftists, right? Now, there are some Republicans who drive Teslas, I'm sure. In fact, I know a couple, but I think it probably leans more left than right. So you got people who did exactly what the left has said, which is be nice to the earth, fight global warming, drive an electric vehicle, do all the right stuff to save the earth, et cetera. They do. Happens that cars get set on fire, they break their windshields, they flatten their tires, et cetera, which is amazing. And then they don't suffer. So the people who do this, we let them on camera. They need to be rounded up. They need to be thrown in prison for a long time. That's the best thing you can do for Okay, let's take this question over here. Hang on, wait for the microphone.
By the way, the date when Social Security came in was January 1937, and the act was signed in 1935. The first payouts were in 1930.
Yeah, I'm Franklin Delano.
We've spoken a lot about the problems here in this city and elsewhere. The fact that crimes are not being prosecuted, Republican-oriented DAs are not going after. Do you think there's something structural where people are afraid to go after the left and their totalitarianism? Witness recent speeches by Hakeem Jeffries. Just up the street here, we've got Columbia University. 1966 was the Clower-Piven strategy, and it's taken 59 years to infiltrate all levels of society. Why are we not getting, the Robert Morgenthau type law and order anymore across the board? And number one, number two, what in your career, what is the most, thing that stands out, good, bad, ugly, hideous, in the time that you started from, coming out of uni in California? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for those questions. In essence, why are people getting away with all this crime and not being locked up? I think, well, certainly in a city like this city, the Democrats are in control. And the Democrats' idea is really something, restorative justice, you might call it that. There are the terms for this. And the idea is that, well, crime is really a matter of people crying out for social justice. And the criminal justice system is really an offshoot of racism, probably born out of slavery. And because it's such a racist system of judicial oppression, the way to handle people who are arrested or whatever is set them free, put them back on the street. Because they're just victims. They're victims of racism. They're victims of the same system that had chattel slaves in the South being beaten and whipped while they pulled cotton out of the ground for no pay and then died completely broke without any opportunity to be free. And the modern version of that plantation system is called the New York NYPD and the prosecutor's office and the criminal justice system. And that's their attitude. That's the attitude of people like Alvin Bragg. That's the attitude of people like Letitia James and these Chesa Boudin and these George Soros DAs, et cetera. George Gascon in LA, who thankfully was booted out of office, thank God. But that's the attitude the left has, and so they're not really interested in locking people. Yes, although here in San Francisco things are going better, and in LA the same. So maybe they're not quite as lock them up as we might like. They're improving, so that's a good thing. So that's part of the problem. Now, among Republicans, I think that there is more of a lock them up, law and order mentality. Maybe not quite as much as we like, and I think that ties in another problem, which is manifests itself not just in terms of criminal justice and all that, but just across the board. And that is, and I've given speeches about this before, that the Republican Party is too nice. We're too nice. We always want to, let's just be nice. Let's hold the other side's hands. If we're nice to them, they'll be nice to us. And no, we're well past that. We're 40 years past Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, battling each other over tax spending and then having beers after work and telling Irish jokes to each other. It'd be very nice to go back to that world, but when you've got people throwing Molotov cocktails at cars, shooting at people, assassinating people, and cheering about it, and engaging in, well, not one but two assassination attempts against Donald J. Trump, this sort of assassination chic or assassination ideation, if you want to use that term, that we certainly saw in his first term, where, for example, you had an institution no less than the New York Public Theater down on Astor Place where I live. They did a version of Julius Caesar when Trump was in office, where everybody was dressed up in modern clothes, not in togas like in Rome, but in modern clothes like I'm wearing. And the Julius Caesar character was wearing a dark blue suit with a white shirt, a big, bright red tie. All right. So when the time came for the senators to stab him to death, you basically saw on stage, courtesy of the New York Public Theater in Central Park, and also same kind of blonde hair, a Donald J. Trump like character being stabbed to death on stage with blood spurting out the whole thing, okay? That did not happen by accident, all right? So this is where the left is. The left is dedicated to violence. They are not the nice people of the Tip O'Neill, Ronald Reagan days. They're all operating somewhere totally different. And yet we still have the GOP saying, oh, let's be nice to them. Let's be nice. I think we're well beyond nice, I'm afraid. You have one more question. What's the strangest thing or the most good, bad, ugly, or hideous thing in my career? It's hard to pick one, but I would say if there's one thing that's really changed very dramatically that I've thought about and I've spoken about, and that is the nature of media bias. We used to say the term media bias, I think it probably first popped up under Reagan. And basically the Reagan era 40 years ago model of media bias was the media would come in and say, President Reagan plans to do this, up, down, sideways, whatever this program is. And this year's budget is this, next year's budget is going to be the next. That's a little different, that's a different story altogether. But anyway, just, here's what we're gonna do with this spending program. And then they would find a little old lady in a wheelchair and say, oh my God, he's gonna take away my food, I'm gonna die, et cetera, et cetera. But at least up until they find out there's a real program, here's how it's being changed, here's the spending this year, there's the spending the next year. And then at the end, they twist it in a way to make the left happy, okay? Now, we're in a totally different area. I'd love to go back to the 80s model media bias, and at least we know what the news is. We can ignore the last 30 seconds where somebody comes in a burst of tears, but at least you get the facts. Now we're in a totally different situation where they invent things. They fabricate stuff. They yank it out of thin air, like the Russia hoax. There was nothing behind the Russia hoax. Oh, Donald J. Trump's a KGB agent. He's a Russian. No, he wasn't. He just invented that. And then you've got the case of the young men from Covington, Kentucky. You remember they were standing out in front of the Lincoln Memorial waiting for a bus to take them from the Right to Life march back to Kentucky. And they decided to be kind of fun and take an American Indian, just kind of beat him up because, we hate idiots, right? All right, well, it turns out, thankfully, somebody had a video camera on and they never touched anybody. They were there waiting for a bus, minding their own damn business. And this American Indian guy comes up with a drum and starts banging a drum right in the face of a guy named Nick Sandman, I think was his name, right? Who just stood there. He didn't lash out. He didn't hit anybody. He just stood there and he gave an interview. He said, I thought if I just sat there with a little smile on my face, would diffuse the situation. All my friends would see that and nobody would respond. And eventually it went away. Nobody got hurt. Instantly, the media said, oh, MAGA kids wearing MAGA hats beat up this Indian and it's awful and like racist attack and all this. Again, invented from nowhere. They pulled it out of the ground, totally out of the air. And then you had just a couple of days ago, Donald J. Trump went to the Pope's funeral wearing a blue suit. What a monster. Oh, awful. Bad. Okay. And they get a picture of him wearing a blue suit with all these other people in black suits, right? Well, then if you zoom out, a bunch of people wear black suits, but there are other people in blue suits, including no less than Prince William, the future King of England, wearing a blue suit. All right. So again, they just make stuff up. So I would love to go back to the old media bias where they tell us the truth and at the end give their opinion versus now where they just literally fabricate things. It's more fake than polyester.
During Trump's first term and now his current term, maybe his third term, maybe we don't know, but there's been a whole proliferation of district court injunctions. Now, number one, is that, in your opinion, legal? And what can be done about the advocacy or the legislation from the judiciary? What can we do about that?
That's a very good question. So what are we gonna do about all these judges who pop up and say, oh, I don't like this program, it's shut down? A couple of things. One is there's effort in the House to limit, if not completely eliminate, the tendency of one district judge in Reno saying, okay, we're gonna shut down this whole program across the country or this initiative, whatever it is. And I think the idea will be, okay, maybe this judge could shut it down in Nevada and Northern California, but he's not gonna be able to shut it down across the country, okay? So I think that's a good first step. Second step, in a lot of these instances, I think that where there's a question, well, this executive order, does the president have the authority to issue an executive order to do X, Y, Z? And you can debate whether he does or not. To me, the instant thing to do would be say, all right, call up John Thune and our Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, say, look, I need legislation to do this, okay? So right now, there's a whole question about, do illegal aliens have the right to get hearings and due process for their booty, okay? My view is, if you are here on a tourist visa, or you're here with a green card, yes, you have the right to appear before a judge. If you broke into this country, you have the right to one thing, which is get kicked out of this country. Period. Okay? Now, if there's some debate about that, let's get a piece of legislation that says if you break in this country, you have the right to be evicted, you have the right to be deported, period. That's it.
Yeah.
And let's put that in the big beautiful bill and let's have that signed as well as the tax cut. That's what I. What's that? Okay.
And the person that's holding you, they have to address why they shouldn't be expelled.
Okay, well, then if you do that, then you're gonna have to have a hearing, and then that can be appealed, and then that decision can be appealed, and every one of these 10 million people can have that case appear before the Supreme Court. Yeah, and you know, we're gonna be here for 300 years until that's done. Yeah, so again, I want to see a piece of legislation that says, look, if somebody broke into your house, you guys go home after this, there's somebody there just, you know, noshing away on your food, right? Are you gonna say, okay, you got a hearing, we'll decide what to do with you? You say, no, get the hell out of my house. If the person doesn't leave, call the police, get them out of there, period. Full stop. So if that's the case at your house, why the hell is it people that break into our country and say, I want a hearing? No, get out of our country, period. Period.
One more question because we have to vacate the room by 9 o'clock.
I'll let you pick the last one.
Yes.
It's the last question. This will be an amazing question. A true showstopper.
Am I allowed to make a comment that I asked you to question?
You have 30 seconds. It can be partial comment questions.
Okay. So I'm sorry I was late. I was sitting on the highway.
Glad you're here.
30 minutes, and I'm new to this group.
Welcome.
Thank you. So I have a history master's from Lehman College, and I studied economics, but I'm still learning. And I believe there's a big story behind the tariffs, and it has to do with the financial driven capitalism that the EU and the World Economic Forum and Joe Biden are all sunk into. And what Trump wants, and I think most of us want, which is to restore the industrial base of this country. And if it costs 2 cents to make sneakers in China, any capitalist is going to send their, the cell phones, the sneakers, whatever, to China. And as far as I understand, maybe I don't get it, that to get those sneakers to be made here and the cell phones to be made here, we have to make the Chinese goods unaffordable to Americans. And that's what the tariffs are meant to do.
Yep.
I'm not sure I understand it perfectly, but I want to know if you agree with what I've said.
I think it's a great question. I think you've summarized the thinking behind the tariff policy pretty well. I think it's pretty much exactly that. I'm all for American reindustrialization, and that reminds me of a story I'll tell you. The very first time I met Bill Buckley, William F. Buckley Jr. This was summer of 1980. I was at the 1980 Republican National Convention. I was a Youth for Reagan delegate, age 15. And in addition to painting signs which we carried around on the convention floor, they had a policy discussion for us. And the people who came to speak to us were William F. Buckley, Bill Rusher, the publisher of National Review, Lynn Nofziger, one of his campaign spokesman, Bill Simon, the former U.S. Treasury Secretary under Nixon, and Ed Meese, I believe that's, so we had a great lineup of people to come speak to us. And so I got permission to meet Bill Buckley before the show, before the presentation. So I went backstage, I showed him the latest copy of National Review. I said, may I get your autograph, sir? He signed it. He said, can I get a picture with you? He said, wonderful, I'm happy to take a picture. So I pulled out my point and shoot 110 camera, very simple camera, no lenses, nothing, but just a point and shoot. And I look around for somebody to take the picture. Right behind me is standing none other than Bill Simon, former U.S. Treasury Secretary under Richard Milhouse Nixon. So I said, Mr. Secretary, would you please take a picture of me? Mr. Buckley said, sure, I'd be delighted. So he pulls out this camera, smaller than this, and he looks at it like that and holds it up. He's mystified. He has no idea what to do with this thing. And William F. Buckley Jr. says, the day William Simon can't use a Kodak Instamatic is the day America must reindustrialize. I thought that was wonderful. So I get the picture back. This is not the days when you instantly see your pictures. You got to take them a photo mat and drop them off. A week later, you get your photos. So the photo comes back like this. And so we've got a window with the trees outside, Bill Buckley, and me from about here forward. So not a good photo, but a pretty good story, I think. So in the spirit of reindustrialization, I think reindustrialization is a great thing. I'd like to see our our factory towns come back to life. I would love to see them brought back to life through things like a corporate tax of 15% rather than 21, a corporate tax of 10% rather than 21, a corporate tax of 0 rather than 10. Energy dominance and inexpensive energy. Things like legal reforms. If you open a factory or an assembly line, you can do it without worrying about getting sued nonstop around the clock. We need to have bright workers who can operate a lot of the machinery that is not just like turn it on and get a sledgehammer and hammer things. A lot of modern manufacturing involves a lot of computers and high-tech stuff. And we need to have a workforce with the human capital who are able to work these machines and do this sort of stuff. That means you have to have schools that perform. You got to have schools where kids learn things. That means we have to have school reform and education reform and school choice. Vocational schools are very important. You know, not everybody's going to go to Harvard or Columbia or Princeton or Georgetown. And so let's make it possible for them to be able to do HVAC and do electronics and do plumbing, carpentry. Those are all very good things. And some of these people make more money than the kids who actually go and study poetry. Yeah, I mean, you come out doing HVAC and you're making 120, 150,000 a year. I'll give you a better example. I was at a bar I live in the East Village, there's a bar in the East Village, and there was a young guy pouring me a bartender pouring me a drink. And I said, you know, when you're not a bartender, what else do you do? Because a lot of these folks are actors and stuff. And I thought he'd say he's an actor. He said, well, I'm in welding school. Great. What kind of money can you make come in on welding school? He said, well, I'll probably graduate in about a year or so. I think it's a 2-year program maybe. And he said, I'll probably make about 75,000 when I first get out. And then after a couple of years, you become an apprentice, you make about 125. And then after like 4 or 5 years, you probably start your own company and hire another 4 or 5 guys. You're making $250,000. So I said, you're going to be making, within 5 years, you're going to be making $250,000 a year. Number one. Number two, and maybe even more impressive, when you leave work, welders don't bring the torches and the canisters of gas home and do homework and like, oh, do a little welding. You know, we white collar people, you go back home and you get online and your boss is saying, oh, can you fix this? And you check that and you update this chart and you do more on that PowerPoint and you do a little bit more on this business proposal. The work never escapes you. You're a welder, you leave all that stuff in a welding shop, you go home and guess what? You got the night off. You take a 2-week vacation, you've got 2 weeks off without anybody saying, how's that welding going? You know, that doesn't happen in that profession. So in a sense, if you're making $250,000 a year and you can leave your work completely behind you when you go home, that sounds like a pretty big victory to me. So it's a wonderful bit for people who can go to vocational school and enjoy that sort of thing.
And no loans.
And no loans, correct. That's why you don't come out with $100,000 or even $300,000 in school debt. You know, you might have 20 or 30,000 from tech school. It's going to be a much smaller bill as far as that goes. So I'm for reindustrialization. I'd like to see a lot of those other things done to make America competitive and innovative and be able to beat our trading partners overseas. If we can't do it on labor, we ought to be able to do it on lower taxes, on deregulation, on cheaper energy, and on improved human capital. And I'd love to see it done that way before we do it through the manner of tariffs, which are really nothing more than taxes and tax increases. So I think that's it.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Experience and leave behind the minor.
I like to focus on the positive, whatever possible. Thank you very much. Yeah, go ahead.